Hello and welcome to another episode of BestinUC TV. I'm your host, Heather Clancy. You know, IT and communications, etc., a lot of people are talking about infrastructure in the cloud. So I was wondering, why not IP telephony in the cloud? Makes a lot of sense. We're used to having phone service from a carrier. Why don't you hear more about IP telephony services, unified communications in the cloud? I've asked Dave Casey of Westron Communications to debate this topic with me a little bit. Hello, Dave.
Hello, I'm looking forward to a debate.
I hope there's a lot less snow there than there is here in New Jersey.
It is 60 wonderful degrees in Dallas, Texas, right?
Well, I guess hopefully it's warmer for the Super Bowl soon.
Yeah, and actually, ironically, it might be icy for the Super Bowl.
So
stay tuned.
As a journalist, I hear a lot about the cloud. And this was a very logical question. You had proposed a topic when we were debating it in email, but how is IP telephony going in the cloud? Are there many people that are adopting it as a service? Are there many services available to the mid-size or small business? Give me a foundation.
There are tons of things available. And it's interesting, it's one of those things that I think it just goes in cycles. Mm-hmm. Long ago, Centrex was a word some folks may remember, which was actually a phone system, a PBX, if you will, maintained by the phone company at their premise. And the only thing you saw that were the phones on your premise.
Right.
And it was truly a cloud-based, TDM or analog type phone system. And that was popular for years and years and years. Primarily, a lot of distributed organizations would use it at college campuses, cities, county governments, school districts, that sort of thing. Very cost effective at the front end. It was very cost effective. Toward the end of its life, it got to be where the premises-based phone system was a lot less expensive. So you saw fewer and fewer people using Centrex. So it's back. I mean,
So how does this model work with IP telephony? Is it just the same? Have a server somewhere in a cloud, somewhere in a data center that then hosts the service for the business?
On the surface, that's really it. And it really depends on the architecture of the IP phone system or system that underlies the service. It's relatively straightforward to stand up a server at a data center. Provide IP connectivity to that server from an organization's premise or premises, if they're headquarters and remote offices, and then have IP phones on desks that essentially are controlled, through that system. So on the surface, it sounds very simple and appealing. I think a lot of people think, well, I don't want to put a lot of money in infrastructure of a phone system. I'd rather outsource that. We're in the business we're in. It could be a financial services company or a construction company or whatever. They really feel like, we know that world. We don't really know the phone world. We'll let somebody else, experts, handle that. Right. And so there is an appeal for that.
What is a good reason to put IP telephony in the cloud? What would be a good reason to opt for that versus an on-premise solution?
Well, there's several. One of the ones that we see most often is if your need for that telephony is relatively flexible. An example would be a company, one of our clients that we have that does tax return processing. So they have about 200-300 full-time employees that work year-round, but during tax season, they have hundreds more or even thousands more employees working for them, and hundreds more locations that aren't there during the rest of the year. So it's really a seasonal type thing. That's one example. Another might be a company that's fast growing or is project-based. If a consulting company sometimes, for the next 6 months, we're going to have 200 people in Chicago. But following that, the Chicago office will drop back to its normal 50-person size. So you've got these wide variances where it's relatively difficult to accommodate those if you're buying equipment, installing it, and deinstalling it all the time.
I want to go back to the first example you gave, which is a company that exists somewhere, but that grows and shrinks over time. So are they using a completely service-based solution, or is it a hybrid, if you will? Like there's some infrastructure and some, when they need to grow, they add that capacity.
A lot of folks, I've seen it both ways. A lot of them will just outsource the whole thing and just say, somebody else, host that in the cloud for me. Others will have a phone system, if you will, for a premises-based phone system for their permanent folks, all the back office folks, the executives and so on. So they're not, that system will be in-house, and then they'll just use the cloud-based offering really for the flexible stuff. And where they don't really want to dedicate capital expenditures, CapEx, to that.
Sure. So what is the reason not to do it in the cloud?
Well, there's some traps, or I won't say traps, so there's some considerations that people have to make, I think. One is that IP voice is a very demanding application. It truly is just an application that rides on an IT network. And it's one of the more demanding. I think video and voice are probably the two most. And what we see is that on the surface it looks simple. I'll have a server in the cloud, or I'll have a phone system, if you will, in the cloud. I'll attach to it via IP, and I'll have these phones on desks. Well, there's something in the middle there, and that's the client's network, the client's Ethernet network, and how well that network is designed and implemented has a huge impact on the experience the client's going to have, or the customer sitting there with a phone on their desk, the experience they're going to have. And in a premises-based system, a big part of the design is making sure that the network is designed really well tuned to support IP voice. A lot of times the cloud-based deals, essentially the reason they're doing that is they may not have a big IT staff. They may not have a lot of people engineering on their network. So they're looking for to buy it as a service for that reason. And so what we see a lot of times, we've replaced a lot of cloud-based systems with premises-based systems over the years when they've had a bad experience with that. They've either had severe downtime, or they've had poor call quality, dropped calls, and sometimes a slower response to getting people onboarded and terminated and so on. So if you hire somebody new to get their phone actually operational on their desk, you open a service ticket, it may take a few days. So there's that type of thing. And then the other, that's really one of the things we see is how carefully thought out is that design at the front end. And that can be a challenge.
So it does sound like, though, there could be a reason why a company at different points in its life cycle or different phases of its growth might want to go back and forth between the two models, or have, again, some hybrid of the two.
We have a client, perfect example. They started out a pretty small consulting company. So early on in their existence, we sold them a IP-based phone system. And several of the principals were familiar with the system from a previous employer. They really liked the system. But as they've grown, they've now grown to over 200 employees. A lot of the employees are not using the phone system the way they should, because they're actually outside the office all the time. They rarely are sitting where the phones are located.
Right.
And so those guys we talk to them, and really the best move for them is to move to a cloud-based system that they can actually have a phone at home that's connected to the cloud-based system, so that when they get back home, they can do a lot of their catch-up work. They also have a mobility type of connection to that. And then they don't really have an IT staff to say, they're too busy doing other people's IT work to do their own. So they're one of the very lean staff, and managing a phone system is just not high on their list. So in their case, the moving to a cloud-based scenario was really the best move. And then over time, they may bring it back. Who knows?
Yeah, I guess just whatever makes sense at the particular period of time. Just to